guys, welcome to the Homework Assignment Podcast, where it is our assignment to find the balance between work life and home life. I'm your host, RJ Patino. Today I'm here with my lovely wife.
Hi, I'm Ashton Patino.
Today what we want to do is give you guys a rundown of what this entire podcast is going to entail. We have a lot of amazing information, amazing advice, and discussions that we're going to be able to provide for you guys. We're going to cover topics such as fitness and health, business, startups, or whether you have a business and you're looking to scale it. We're going to talk about relationships, both personal, between boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, relationships with your children, how to parent, and also relationships with the outside world, right? We're going to talk about social media. We're going to talk about everything that literally you need to do, not just in work, but as well as at home for yourself in order to get to in order to get to where you want to be and reach your goals. And the way that we're going to start this off is we're first going to give you guys a little bit of background about us, who we are, who I am, and what we do. Again, I'm RJ Patino. I am the CEO and founder of Elder Contracting. What we do is we specialize in residential and commercial construction and remodeling. The journey that I have been through, that my lovely wife has been through with me by my side, and some of my closest friends, which are in the room. We got Kyle, our producer, Mikey, co-producer, co-host, and it's been a crazy ride. We've had a lot of ups, we've had a lot of downs. There's been times where we weren't sure if we were doing what we were supposed to do. We weren't sure if we were actually going to make it where we wanted to go. And we just want to share that story with you guys. And in order to understand that story, first I need to bring you back to my childhood and what my life was a little bit like. I grew up in a household of 6 siblings. I am the oldest. I'm currently 28 years old, and I have 5 younger siblings. I got 3 sisters and 2 brothers. And growing up, I would say I had an amazing life. I didn't have very many hardships. My dad was a business owner himself. His main trade was in the mechanical and vehicle industry. He owned a tire shop, a mechanic shop. So I was able to grow up during my summers, and most of my breaks I would go and work with him, and I learned a lot of my ethics. I learned a lot of my discipline and I guess money knowledge as well from watching my dad run that shop, him giving me certain responsibilities. And my work ethic definitely was built and established during that, as well as sports. I played a lot of sports. Football was my main sport. I did BMX for a while. I was a lot better at BMXing than football, but football was more of the dream for me. So I learned a lot of amazing lessons and how to work with people as well through those sports. And fast forwarding a little bit into 2008, when the economy really took a hit, my father was struggling with his business, and come to find out at this point, he was acting a little weird, and we found out that he was a heavy drug abuser, and he had been this way for many years before we had even found out, or it had actually portrayed itself. And I definitely know it portrayed itself because of the economy and everything that was happening in my dad's business. He was a lot more stressed, and he ended up just getting a lot worse. And during that time as well, I was in high school, so I was a sophomore, and I had a lot going on, and I was trying to figure out, obviously, plan my life like most kids do in high school, trying to figure out where they're going to go in the next few years. And so with that, on that side as well, it made it very difficult for me to even see what the future was going to entail. Luckily, I have amazing friends, so I was able to kind of distract myself from my home life at that point. And then come to find out also, my mom was also a heavy drug user, but she did a lot better because she didn't portray it at home. She would do it when we were asleep, take her pills or whatever she was doing. My dad was actually starting to do it in plain sight in public during the day. It didn't matter what time. He'd come to my football games and be completely just out of his mind, trying to get onto the field. And I remember my coach telling me one time, hey, your dad can't come to any more games. Anyways, long story short, we'll cover a lot more of that detail a little bit throughout every podcast as the topics come up. But yeah, it was a very interesting situation. So most of my high school life, or period of my high school, there was a lot of home struggle going on and trying to figure out what I was going to do. I got hurt in football. I didn't really care to play for college ball, but that's kind of the only thing I had going for me. My dad was a big sports guy, so that was like where we wanted to head. And then I'd also plan on taking over the family business. So I felt like I had a decent plan. But when we lost the shop, lost our home, and we had to go live with aunts and stuff until we could get some stuff figured out, I had that disappear, and then I had 3 partial tears in a few of my ligaments in my ankle my senior year, my 3rd game into the season, so I wasn't able to play the rest of the season. Got another cool story there with my friend Mikey that I would love to explain a little bit later, but so it was definitely an interesting ride and an emotional one for sure. And I got on a path that I didn't really want to be on, that I never wanted to be on, a path that I am ashamed of. I didn't like a lot of the things that I became, a lot of the things that I was doing, a lot of the decisions I was making. And so when I ended high school to about 21 years old, I just had kind of my odd phase of partying and living a very interesting lifestyle. Me and my friends, from high school, we all did it together, and so there still was a little bit of comfortability there, I think, for all of us at that time in our lives, trying to figure out what we were kind of doing with ourselves. But point in time came, which I think it does for most people. You finally figure out who you want to be, and you finally get that motivation and that drive to actually change. And one of the things I had to do for myself, which weighs heavily on the religion I believe in, is I felt and wanted to, for myself, go and serve a mission for my church. I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and so for me, that had always also been a plan, was to go on a mission. And since I kind of came off that path, I was like, okay, I need to go back. I need to realign myself with my beliefs and my core values. And so I basically dropped where I was, who I was hanging out with for the most part. Still kept in contact with a few friends, and I moved into a stranger's house out in Santan Valley, for those of you that live in Arizona. And I moved in with a guy named David Phillips. He is like a father figure to me today, great mentor, and lived with him for about 8 months. At first it was very awkward and weird, but I could tell he cared for me. I could tell he loved me, and he wanted only the best for me. So I worked with him. I followed him. I listened to his counsel and advice, and I ended up changing my life. There was still some stuff that I definitely had to work on, but I got myself to a point where I was actually getting on a plane to go to South America, where I was called to serve a mission in Santiago, Chile. And I went and served that mission for 2 years. That was an amazing experience in itself. Again, a lot of hardships. I learned a lot of lessons. I learned how to persevere. I learned how to push myself to limits I didn't think were possible yet again. And which was kind of cool, because I think once I got off that path of, sports and, having that family business and being the older sibling, and once I got off that path, I was able to, one, it's like practice, right? You have to practice to make something perfect. And so when you practice mental toughness constantly, obviously you get better and better. And then when you let go of it, it's kind of like the gym. If you stop working out, if you're heavy in the gym, you start working out for a day, the old saying is, hey, every day you miss in the gym is a week of progress lost. It's kind of that same thing. So I went years, had stopped practicing that mental toughness, and then going to my mission, I realized, wow, I had really regressed, and I was able to actually work on that again, which was phenomenal. People, in my opinion, think, or at least people who are going to serve a mission, they think it's about, my main part of my mission is to go and help other people, and that is a huge part of it, if not one of the main pieces to the mission. But the other part of it is that you end up working on yourself. You end up finding all the little things that you don't like about yourself, that you want to work on, that you want to change, and you're able to have the time and you're able to focus on that. Because one of the things that our religion teaches, and something that I'm really big on, is that you have to work on yourself first before you can help other people. Because if you are trying to help other people, whether it's good intention or not, and you're not okay yourself, you're only going to hurt yourself more, and you're not really going to help them as much as you're wanting to, even if at all, at that point. So it's really important to, I had to cleanse myself. I had to clean the inner vessel before I could actually make a difference in the world, which is something I've always wanted to do. Love helping people. I love working with people. And so, 2 years of that was fantastic. I kept in contact with Kyle, Mikey, and a few other people, and obviously my family. Had a lot of struggles going on back home, and that was also really hard, seeing certain things transpire, and I wasn't able to be there to kind of help my family out. So, anyways, fast forward, come home from my mission, and let me back up. So while I was on my mission, just about a couple months before heading home, I had plans to go to Utah. I had signed up for LDS Business College, and I was going to get a degree in business management. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. Didn't know what I wanted to do exactly, but I definitely wanted to be an entrepreneur. So I had those plans. I had potential plans to move into a room or share a room with a roommate for my mission. And then about a month before I was going to come home or get on the plane to leave my mission, I felt like I really needed to just go back home. So I ended up doing that. And then when I got off the plane in the airport, I saw, and again, so I had been in communication with my family. I knew there were some hardships, but nobody was kind of letting me know what was going on. I think they wanted to keep me separated. They didn't want me to worry because I was 17 hours on a plane away from them. So I get off the plane, and I remember walking through the terminal or whatever, and I see my little brother. He's yards away from my family, like as close as he can get to me, but without crossing the security threshold. And he's like crying, just really excited to see me, and it was awesome. And I remember seeing everybody, and then I remember looking at my mom, and I remember seeing my mom looking just the worst I had ever seen her, just completely sick. I didn't quite know what it was, but come to find out a few days later, she was still heavily addicted to drugs. We had thought that she had kind of stopped that while I was on my mission. So I noticed that right away and called her out on it. That was a tough experience. She fought that quite a bit, but we were able to get her into rehab. So before I explain that, a little bit of the picture, talk a little bit about how I met my wife, because that was kind of in between there. So basically, from the time I got off the plane, I think I got back on a Tuesday, if I remember correctly. And that Sunday, we do what's called a homecoming talk. So I get up on a pulpit, and I got 15 minutes to talk about my mission, explain who I am, because I haven't seen these people in 2 years, and there's probably a lot of new people that have come to the Word, and I get to talk about my experience and what I've learned and share my testimony of my faith. And on that pulpit, I looked down, and in the third row, just to the right a little bit, was the Job family, and my wife was sitting there looking all beautiful. And I remember feeling really anxious, and I loved public speaking. I was pretty good at it. And I don't know if I choked or anything, but I remember trying to keep my mind aligned on my talk, because all I wanted to do was just keep looking over at her to see if she was looking at me. So after that talk, I did not approach her. I was a little weak on that point, mostly because I was like, I'm not going to be like the typical stereotype, come home and get married in 2 months, even though that's exactly what happened. I ignored her right after that. I didn't want to go talk to her, and a couple of days later, I get a DM on Instagram saying, hey, I'm Ashton, and I saw you give your homecoming talk, and I think you're really cute. And
I asked you on a date.
Yeah, she basically asked me out. So, yeah. Well, she did. She did ask me out. Yeah. She slid in my DMs and asked me out, and I said yes. And 2 months later, got on a knee at a Lantern Festival and proposed to her. Top 3 scariest moments of my life. And she said no. I'm just kidding. She said yes. I thought she was going to say no, but she did say yes. I don't know why, but she did. And so, then 4 months later, we got married. I didn't marry her in high school. I think that's a very important piece of the puzzle of our lives. And we got a little bit of backlash on that, a little bit of judgment. But for us, we were just in love. I loved her, and there was no point in waiting. I wanted to start a family with her, and I needed her by my side to be able to reach and achieve my goals. I knew that right off the bat. And it's kind of interesting because I always tell her, and I don't know how this makes her feel, because one, she's stunningly gorgeous. You guys can see that. But I saw her potential, and that's what mostly attracted me to her. I saw a little bit of a glimpse of the future of what she was going to become and what we were going to become together, and that is what really drove me, my attraction towards her. And she, in the last 4 years, we've been married a little over 4 years, and I mean, just watching that potential unfold and seeing those, I mean, she's already reached the potential that I actually saw, and now she's beyond that, and I'm just like really excited to see. I mean, she's 22, I'm 28, so I mean, we've only been married 4 years, and just knowing like in this 4 years that she's reached her potential, I'm just so excited to see what we're going to be able to accomplish together. So we got married, and a few months later we found out we were pregnant with our first daughter, Nova, and that was an interesting pregnancy. If you want to talk a little bit about it.
I was sick the whole pregnancy, so that was not fun. And then towards the end of the pregnancy, I had retained a lot of water, so I just was uncomfortable constantly. My hips hurt. It was just a very uncomfortable time in pregnancy.
And she's had 4 knee surgeries. That's super important. So she has really bad knees, 2 on each knee. And she still has problems. She'll be walking and her knee will pop out of place or dislocate. Right? Yeah. So either way, it hurts her a lot, and it's really, really sad to watch. And so that did not help, right?
No, yeah. Just all my knees and hips and feet are all kind of messed up, so that made the pregnancy a little bit worse. And then we had to have an emergency C-section with her, so that was just an addition to that pregnancy.
Yeah, so that labor was about 26 hours.
Yeah.
I'm getting all this information right, guys, because this is like our 80th take on this podcast. So I've been able to I've been corrected a lot. I'll put it that way. So 26-hour labor, and there is a picture somewhere on Instagram of me sleeping. I was very, very tired and stressed, and that is not saying, obviously she had the worst thing in the world, but I do feel bad for sleeping, but I do think it's kind of a funny memory. I don't know if that's stereotype of dads falling asleep while their wives are in labor, but
we don't blame you, dog. You're good.
I was definitely that guy. So I even tried to drink a lot of caffeine for my second baby, and I think I fell asleep with Athena too, but we'll get to that part in here in a minute. But anyways, 26 hours of labor. They had tried breaking the water, and so there wasn't any liquid in the placenta with my daughter, and she was losing oxygen, and her heart rate was dropping kind of like a wave. And
because they gave me Pitocin, the contractions were stronger, so that was also making her lose oxygen.
So they did an emergency C-section, second scariest moment of my life. Anyways, she's healthy now. She's adorable. She has her mom's attitude, so I get walked over every day of my life by all 3 of my girls. So that's lovely and fun for me. And my wallet does go missing from time to time. Athena brought it to me this morning, actually. She goes, here. And I was like, oh, that's where my wallet was. Thank you. 18 months after that, a few months later, we got pregnant again. And so 18 months after that, we had Athena. And Athena her pregnancy was another emergency C-section, but we knew the C-section might happen, so we were a lot more mentally prepared for it. And again, I think I fell asleep during that pregnancy too, did I?
I don't know.
We'll leave it at that. I did not. She doesn't remember, so we're good to go. It's like the first thing she hasn't remembered in 4 years of my marriage to her, so that's fantastic. And Athena was born. She's adorable, big bug eyes, very, very, extremely, ultimately sensitive. Very sensitive. I don't know if I can say that enough, but she has the sweetest heart in the world. Yes, and so if you even look at her like you're mad at her, she will break down in a plethora of tears. And which I guess is a little manipulative at sometimes, in my opinion. She's too young to do it, my wife says, but she knows. No. She knows. I swear she knows. Because you can't just help but love her and she just gets what she wants. But anyways, I don't know. I think she's really smart, so but yeah, those are our two daughters, and they're fantastic. And so our oldest is 3, so we've been parents for about 3 years. And during this whole time of trying to figure out how to be a parent, how to parent, which I think we kind of knew an idea, but obviously there's no book on how to write or no book written on how to parent.
Well, there are plenty, but you
It's just-
can't.
yeah, they- you
they
just
don't
can't-
work. Yeah, it
yeah,
doesn't
they-
matter. You can't read them and learn.
Yeah,
them.
it
just
doesn't
doesn't work.
even compare to the real life
Yeah, the
experience.
experience
And during that time, so my siblings, my younger siblings, I have a younger sister Bella, she's 15, and I have a younger brother, Gunnar, who is 13 now. And they were living with my mom, and my mom was, even though she went through rehab, I don't think she ever got over her addiction. I think she got really good at hiding it again because she only went to rehab for a month for over a decade worth of an addiction to prescription pills.
Yeah.
I mean, and it wasn't our choice. She didn't. They let her out, and I don't know if they could keep her there, obviously, but she stopped going after a month, and she wasn't as bad, but I think she was still doing it. She would just learn how to control it and not do it around us. She dove into work. She was working literally all the time. She was hardly ever home. But I got married and moved out of the house, so I didn't see a lot of that. But she started drinking quite a bit, and she was driving with the kids, and something happened, so that kind of got us involved and to figure out what was kind of going on.
Yeah, and at this point, your dad and your mom were separated.
Right, yeah. So dad and mom were, mom and dad separated like a year after, so like in 2014. Dad left, and I'll explain that story a little bit later of how I kind of got into the lifestyle that I didn't want to live. A lot of that had to do with him. My siblings were just living with my mom, and she, was drinking a lot, had her addictions to some other stuff, and so we ended up taking in our siblings. DCS got involved. Not due to us. There was a school incident, and
It had nothing to do with school either. It was an anonymous call from someone.
an anonymous call. Whoever that person was, thank you.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if I could have controlled the situation myself, but it wouldn't have really progressed anywhere without the involvement of DCS. And so we've been working with DCS and Child Services with our siblings. They've been in our care for the last 2 years, and the plan has been reunification with my mother, but she has not been showing progress, so it looks like we're going to be leading towards guardianship and adoption here shortly. But what's interesting for us, at least, is that we're trying to establish how to parent. We're building our family, starting our lives, all of that, plus taking in my 2 siblings, and that burden on my 22-year-old wife, I'm just so proud of her and the way she handled that. She has just been my anchor in that, because if she couldn't handle it, I don't know what I would do with my siblings, but they wouldn't be in my house, because my wife is my pride and joy. But she's been great, and of course, there's been absolutely tough moments. Again, like a business, there's been moments where she's wanted to give up, and I've wanted to give up, and we've luckily never felt that quite at the same time, and we've been able to kind of pull each other out of those moments. And I think a lot of that also stems from is that these 2 kids are teenagers, and we've never dealt with teenagers. My wife literally was a teenager a few years ago, and had an adorable attitude that she kind of still has. Anyways, so trying to figure out new babies and terrible 2s and 2 teenagers that are trying to figure out their life and going through puberty, and my brother never had a sex talk, so anyways, it's been a wild ride. I am grateful from it. I think we learned a lot of lessons, and we do love Gunnar and Bella. They are frustrating a lot of the times, and there was so much of life's lessons that they didn't get taught. There was so much schooling. They were failing,
straight
each year for multiple years. They didn't have clothes that fit them. And so they were so regressed, and they didn't have the common sense that kids their age should have. They were almost reading, but living at a 4th grade level when they were in, 8th grade and high school. And so that was very frustrating, just even teaching them how to do stuff that they should have learned to do in 5th grade. And then on top of all that, they also had the trauma of like my mom and my dad not being there or kind of being around, and them still, having addictions and stuff. And they actually got the worst of it because like me, I had 15 years of not even knowing what was going on, but like good parents, like, my dad owned a business. We went to church every Sunday. We did family events together. We were active in sports, active in, our community. Both my parents were community leaders, and, we had some great vacations. And so they didn't get that. They just got the drug part. And so they've had this trauma, and on top of being a teenager and figuring out life, and on top of having to come live with us, that I think is a huge reason of just the chaos that's kind of been surrounding us and them for the last couple of years. But I'm glad they're out of there. I'm glad they're with us, and we're doing the best that we can for them. They both progressed quite a bit. There's been some regression in some areas with them as well, but they definitely have done great. So that is our family life in a nutshell. And through doing all of that, and summarizing all of that crap that's been going on in our lives, and good crap, bad crap, whatever, just the whole experience in itself, I also started a business. And just to give you a little background on our business again, is I own Elder Contracting. So it's a construction company, remodeling company. We specialize in a variety of residential, commercial, and community type of construction. And that's been a wild ride for the last 5 years as well. I basically got off the plane on my mission, and while trying to convince and sell myself to my wife to get her to marry me, I started landscaping. I printed out hundreds of cards and flyers, and I hit as many houses in our neighborhood as possible. And, a lot of people in our neighborhood that know me. And I didn't get one call. I don't recall, I know for a fact, not one person called me in that neighborhood, no matter how many flyers and cards I printed out. But I started getting other work elsewhere. And I think that was an interesting lesson in itself, to kind of see like where I was putting my efforts weren't bearing me fruits, but the action of doing something still bore me fruits. And I don't know how that all worked out. Well, I do know, and I do have a great theory, but I'll get into that in another day, another time. And I started landscaping. I built a really good clientele. I was making some decent money. I was able to, flex on my wife a little bit and take her to restaurants and get her gifts, and didn't really plan on saving too much. Never really learned how to save, honestly. My whole family, my parents at least, were big spenders, and I never learned anything about finances. I think in my mind it was just, hey, if you need to save money, you ought to just make more money than you spend. And I've learned a lot more since that mindset. But it went well, and I ended up meeting a guy named Scott. Tree fell out of my truck on the road one day, and outside of a Bank of America out in Chandler, and this kid came up and said, to help me, which was awesome. And he's like, hey, you own a landscaping company, or do you landscaping? I'm like, yeah. Kind of give him a rundown, and then he introduced himself. He also had a little landscaping business and a pretty good clientele, and we met and we decided to team up. So we teamed up, and I was the field guy running the jobs, and he was the mind behind the scenes doing all the office work. And we did end up getting, we did some jobs, and I think a lot of the experience of going from landscape to hardscape is what we did, like pavers, turf, and all that. And that was an amazing experience as well. It didn't last very long. We ended up going separate ways. My heart was more in the construction part, and he loved landscape. And so we ended up splitting up, and I started getting into remodels, which I already had a pretty decent knowledge base of construction, general construction. I worked for a lot of restoration companies growing up, damage control restoration, slate restoration, and a few other companies. And so I had a pretty good general knowledge. Apart from that, which is always good with my hands, grew up in a mechanic shop, and so I was good with putting two and two together, kind of solutionizing problems, which I tend to do a lot according to my wife. And I guess not everything needs a solution, but and so that's where all my knowledge came in. I'm like, I'm gonna start doing construction. So I started doing construction. My stepfather was a huge piece of that puzzle. He'd been a handyman his whole life. apart from another other skill sets. And so he worked with me, and we did all kinds of stuff, built bathrooms, additions, we painted commercial buildings. Him, me, and my younger brother Colton, who is now part of the elder team, which again, huge family company. There are some great people in here, and so that's where we learned how to do everything with our hands. And I finally got officially licensed and going bigger and building bigger, and I failed pretty big too. I don't know what year it was. I can't remember. Everything's such a blur at this point, but it was a Christmas time, and I had that whole year been pretty consistent in work and pretty consistent in having jobs and getting jobs done and making good money. And 2019. And it just slowed down, and I didn't know what I was doing I knew how to do construction, but running a business is so different. And that's another point I really want to bring out, and we're going to talk a lot about in the future, is you can have a skill set, you can have a talent, and if you want to start a business, it is not the same thing. Okay, you may be good at swinging a hammer, you may be good at putting up tile like I felt I was, but running a business and having systems and a culture and knowing how to be a leader, it's just a completely different and separate skill set that you need to have more than the experience of construction. And again, I'm talking about construction companies here. And so I failed horribly. I could get the work. I could sell all day long. I'm a great salesman. I could sell ice in Eskimo. I think it's a phrase, something like that. But I did not know how to run or organize a business. And because of that, the summer of 2019, I had no money. Everything I had tried to build, all the jobs and capital I tried to build was gone. I had lost money throughout many jobs, and that's due to poor organization and management. Again, not knowing what I was doing, not knowing how to control cash flow. And we had a Christmas trip planned with her family to go up to Colorado that Christmas, and I didn't have money to pay for the gas. I had a vehicle, so I had to go to family and our church and get help to pay my bills. And that was a very low moment. That was a moment where I felt like I wanted to quit. I felt like I could be doing other stuff because my main priority was to provide for Ashton. And she was pregnant with Nova at that time. So I had all these priorities in my head, and I'm like, okay, maybe I need to go do something else, take my skill set. Maybe I can go sell at a dealership. My uncles and her family, they all own a construction company. They're all contractors. And so I knew I could, go do stuff for them. And I had a lot of people also that cared for me that are like, hey, man, you just need more experience. So why don't you go, work and hang windows? Why don't you go do more landscaping or focus on where you can get more experience about how to run a business? And again, knowing what I know now, looking back, it had nothing to do with hands-on experience. I need to go get business experience about how business management, construction management experience is what I really needed. But I had all these people that cared for me, cared for, my wife, that were just like, hey, you need to maybe do something else. And I think that was a pivotal moment for me in my personal life and in our relationship as well, because she was going to have to support whatever decision I made, on basically hey, if I want to do something, I need to just do it. I decided to keep going. I decided to keep pressing forward. I went with my uncle who had a business opportunity to help him build a restoration company. So I spent 6 months with him on a very low salary that didn't pay for our bills very well. During that time, we had our first baby, went through that whole experience, and then I was still failing on trying. Restoration is way different than construction. It was a harder business to get in with insurance companies. So again, lack of experience and knowledge. We tried to build this without the proper resources, and we didn't make that work either. So that's another company that someone entrusted me, which it wasn't my company, but my uncle brought me on to build it and to get work because I'm a great salesman. But you don't sell people on emergencies. There might be some cases, but for the most part, emergencies, people call, they call 911, they call the fire department for fires, they call, plumbers for floods. And so I'm this guy trying to chase, basically. And that's how the process used to be back in the day. Fire chasers, all those people would chase these jobs to get the reconstruction working. For me, I was just trying to, get people on social media, on Facebook. Hey, I have a leak, and trying to be the first one to get there, or trying to contact them to go. And it just didn't work out. And so I started picking up, I kept getting calls for remodeling because that's what I had done. And so I was still kind of doing that on the side to cover the other expense of living that, this salary wasn't covering. So, I'd work all day long trying to get jobs for this company and build it, and then still have to go out and work a little bit to get these jobs done and pay for this. So, and my uncle knew that, he was supportive of that. He knew that what I was making wasn't good enough at the time. And again, COVID things, inflation started to hit and things got more expensive. So it was really tough. And businesses shut down, right? So I basically got my uncle and, his partner with the restoration company. I said, hey, I'm getting a ton of work right now. Why don't we go where the money is and let's take care of these jobs, and we'll still try to build this company, but let's take these jobs, let's get them done, and let's make some money. And they agreed, and that really is where Elder actually grew in personality and identity for itself. And I, from there, haven't stopped. And last year we, or just that first year of getting back into it, we cleared 7 figures of revenue, and we've about tripled that every single year. Leading up to this year, we have goals to go beyond what we did last year. And again, we have, dozens of employees and work vehicles and a great team, great culture. We have our office and, trailer. So, and I say all this to explain that, like, hey, in 4 years, we went from nothing to being a very successful construction company, and we still have so many flaws. We're still learning so much. We're still learning, about the people that we need to bring on, the people that we're looking for, and there's always stuff to learn. But it's just awesome to see how much everybody has really come together and built what we currently have, and the relationships with investors, corporate companies, and our residential clients. And we never ever marketed, really ever. And we always were busy. Referral basis was huge, and we weren't perfect. We did have bad jobs, and every now and then there's mistakes made, right? But we've learned how to solutionize that. We've learned how to handle those situations very properly. And Elder has just been a huge part of our life now. So on top of all that going on, we built I hate using the word successful company because I don't feel successful, mostly because I have high vision, high goals, which I think is really important. Grant Cardone talks about the broke mindset, about always bringing whatever you have down to zero every day, because that's how the hustle stays alive. And I think naturally I've always been that way. I never feel really satisfied. And we'll talk more about how that affects our relationship and our home life. But I'm very happy and grateful about where we are, what we've built, and the people that have helped me build it, because there's no way I would have been able to bring this where we are today without the key players of our company, which are brothers, fathers, and the people that support them as well. It's just been a phenomenal time. And that is why we are taking it upon ourselves to talk about the assignment, which is to balance home life and work life, because you can't do one or the other. Again, if things aren't good on this side, it's like, what are those scales called? The equilibrium scales or whatever. Like, if too much weight's on one side, then you're not even. You got to bring it even, and when you're even, the equilibrium is set, you're able to succeed and progress at a heavier rate than you would be if your relationship with your wife and your children is crap over here and you're out here hustling, okay? Because you're having stress from home. You're not at 100% operating capacity. You're not at your best. And to be able to build and reach your goals and your visions, you need to be over 100% capacity. You need to be able to put your entire self, your entire heart in, and then have your, the people who support you also be able to do that on the back end. And that's where the balance comes into play. So we're really excited to get this podcast started and really just share our experiences, our lives. And again, we're still growing. We're not, this huge multi-billion-dollar company. We just want to share with other people our experiences, because we all have different experiences, and what we've learned. And one thing I will say before we end today is that I have learned that the principles and ways of building, starting businesses and operating your home and work life, they've been the same for centuries. They've been implemented differently is the only difference. Okay. That is why we have taken it upon ourselves to, the responsibility to find that balance and talk about that balance between home life and work life. We're really excited to share with you guys our experiences. We're going to be having a variety of different people on the show. We're going to be having key players, co-hosts, family members and co-workers here, co-partners, share their experiences with us, kind of our culture and also their personal experiences of what they've learned. And we're also going to have guest speakers. We have a great lineup coming up of business owners that started from zero and have built $1 million, multi-$100 million companies, multi-million-dollar companies, people that have done incredible things in the business and home world. And I can tell you right now, every one of these successful people that I know that we're going to be interviewing, they are amazing people. They have mastered themselves to a point to where their business is a reflection of them. And I think that's one of the most important principles. So we're really excited, guys. Thank you for joining us. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them with us. We're happy to answer them. You can also follow us on Instagram at HWA Podcast, where we're going to be releasing all the info, lineups, everything you guys need to know about this podcast on our Instagram. Go follow us. Don't miss out. This information and everything we're going to be talking about is going to bring your business and yourself personally to an entirely new level that you guys never thought you could achieve or even thought was possible. So go follow us. Don't miss out. Go do it.